Just being able to go for a walk or pick up your kid or take your groceries, we take some of that stuff for granted. And the thing is, whether it's glucose or cholesterol, if you have bad results, you can do something about it. We can do that with movement.
Now, we're all familiar with our vital signs: body temperature, heart rate, blood pressure, and so on. But have you ever thought of movement or our body's ability to move as an equally important vital sign? In today's episode, we're going to explore how new technology is revolutionizing the way that we can optimize our well-being and our ability to move in particular. Hello again, welcome to the Live Long podcast. I'm Peter Bowes. This is where we explore the science and stories behind human longevity. Andrew Menter is the CEO of Physmodo, which uses cutting-edge computer vision technology to help us with mobility, stability and posture, all important components of personalised exercise protocols. Andrew, it's great to meet you.
Likewise, Peter, great to be here. Great to meet you.
Yeah, before we dive into this and the importance of mobility in particular, let's just talk a little bit about you and the journey that you've been on to get to this point in your career.
I have a lot of passion around the topic of longevity and always tracking my biomarkers, and kind of came to Physmodo by looking at the fact that we believe movement is a vital sign, as you alluded to in the intro. So I'll start with what I'm doing now is a big passion of mine, and I'm really excited to be on here. But I think just a bit of the journey professionally, and I tend to try and stay away from this because it turns people off. But I am technically a lawyer, but licensed, but never practiced. I've got a bit of a finance background too, doing a JD MBA, but in talking about passion, it wasn't really on the finance legal side, but more entrepreneurial, and now specifically doing what we're doing at Physmodo. It is very personal to me too. I've had a number of injuries through, playing college tennis, rugby, Ironman, all that stuff. The worst being I tore full rupture of my Achilles, which happened on the left side. I was asymmetric, slap tear, ruptured bicep tendon, meniscus, all on the left side. And these could have been prevented. That's what we're trying to do at Physmodo is see how one moves, see where there's some problems, and have some intervening strategies.
If a lawyer is a switch off, maybe a switch on for this podcast is the fact that you're also an accomplished triathlete.
Yeah, which led to some more injuries. I think that bike ride for 112 miles is not very helpful, nor is the 26 miles on the knees. But yeah, that was super fortunate to have the opportunity to participate, and thought I'd call it quits. And a buddy of mine said, "Hey, you got to come try this one in Germany with me. It's a great race." And so did it in Frankfurt. Just had one of those great days where everything was on, and qualified for Kona World Championships, and did that. Had a great race there, and I said, this is definitely the time to call it quits. And then 2-3 years later, overuse led to a lot of the injuries that I'm dealing with today.
How does your athletic life look now? It's clearly very different to those days of Ironmans.
Well, I'm taking a lot of essential amino acids to compensate for the fact that I can't be as active and do the things that I like to do. For instance, I switched a few years ago to Muay Thai, and I can't kick right now, or certainly do a couple of things that are preventing me from doing that. Squats and things that are super, super important with my knees and back issues, deadlift, some of the basic bench press with my slap tear and ruptured bicep tendon. So it's difficult. And, in talking about longevity, if you look at some of the research that Gray Cook and Lee Burton have done at FMS, it's not just movement as risk factors.
Just for our audience, FMS?
Oh, I'm sorry. FMS is the preeminent movement screen that's been around for 30 or so years. So Lee and Gray are the pioneers, I'd say, in movement assessments. And the FMS is a series. It's 7 movements. You're scored from a 0 to a 3, 21 being the max score. And there's a lot of research showing that, if you're below 14, you have a higher propensity for injury. But these guys have evolved and understand through the research, it's more than just, how you move. And also really what the studies will show about movement can do to some of the things that we measure on wearables. So it's not a correlation, it's a causation that many who have poor movement, soreness injuries, something that prevents you from activity, which I'm dealing with now, does lead to worse sleep and is not good on for behavioral health. So these things are not mutually exclusive.
And crucially important for everyone, not just for elite athletes or former elite athletes. Movement at its most basic is crucial for every single one of us and often underestimated.
Yeah, I mean, you asked about how it's affecting my training. I can't even play golf, which is pretty poor I don't love golf, but it's sometimes effective on a professional level. It's just I can't with my knee. I can get through a round, but I won't be walking very well for 2 weeks. But it's not just weights or any type of sports. It's can affect, I think this leads to the behavioral health, just being able to go for a walk or pick up your kid or take your groceries. We take some of that stuff, or at least I do, take some of that for granted. And the thing is, just like the things that we're measuring, whether it's glucose or cholesterol or you name it, if you have bad results, you can do something about it. We can do that with movement. It just hasn't really been done because it hasn't been scalable. You can't wake up and see how you're moving that day. You can't wear a strap and wake up and see how you're moving or wear a patch or anything. And that's been the challenge.
So tell me about that challenge and Physmodo, how it has developed and essentially what you're doing with it.
Yeah, so again, coming back to FMS, fantastic screen. The challenge there is that you have to have someone do that screen for you and put you through it. So in today's day and age of remote training, medical care, and so forth, that's not practical for scalability. What we looked at doing was doing something that's really quick, where you can self-assess. You have to measure your movement frequently because imagine you're just measuring your sleep once every few months. That's just not good data. There are too many variables that go into one night's sleep. Same with movement. If I just measured it the day after I played that round of golf or a couple of days after my triathlon, that's not my baseline. So how do we measure it consistently so it's good data? And that's going to require super quick screen. You got to be able to self-assess, and that's why we picked just the deep squat, overhead squat, hands over your head, do 3 squats. And from that, we're not getting everything that you need, but we're getting enough information that we can have protocols to try and improve your movement and prevent injury.
So just explain to me then, in a practical sense, how we can use your technology. What does it actually involve?
Just kind of going back, it used to be the Microsoft Kinect camera. For those that don't know, it's the camera that you would see in the Xbox. So it's the piece of hardware, and then also the body pose estimator, which is basically taking a skeleton, looking at the skeleton and looking at your joint. So in the video game, if you're throwing something, the camera recognizes your wrists and your elbow and your shoulder. So when you're doing a throwing motion in your baseball game or whatever it is on the video game, it can emulate that, which was great until the technology became available on the iPad. That made things a lot easier to us. Now we do the same screen, but on an iPad or your iPhone. It's the same 3 overhead squats. on the iPhone and iPad, the challenge was we want again a self-assessment, which means you have to see the iPhone for the guidance of how to do it versus having the phone turned away from you, which would be better theoretically since the back camera is 3D. The front camera is 2D. So again, facial recognition is really what's needed there. What we were able to do is use something called inverse kinematics to have an algorithm that effectively makes that front camera capture all three planes of motion. And so we're able to get the accuracy with that front camera just as we would if we'd use the back camera or that separate depth camera. And now we're able to get the scalability and reach the end user, not just within the four walls, but at home as well.
And to be clear, this is technology that is designed for the end user to use alone. It's something you can do by yourself as opposed to working with a health professional.
Yeah, it's intended to be both. We've started on the B2B side, and as an example, we're in every single stretch lab, which is I think they're up to about 540 in the US. I think it's about 25 in Australia and some in Japan and Mexico. But we want people using this remotely. But it's not so much just someone organically goes on the App Store and downloads this. I think it's more effective if someone is working with a trained professional. Yeah, we give corrective protocols based on how you're moving. So there's a software that can be used, for instance, at Stretch Lab. There's the consumer app that you can get off the App Store or Google Play Store. The middleware is a dashboard that lets the trainer, practitioner communicate with the client, patient to say, all right, Peter, I just see that I wanted you to do a screen. I see that your shoulder score is down today. Hey, what's going on? Something happened there. I want you to pull back and I don't want you to do, shoulder press today, or I want you to scale it. Or maybe here's just as a practitioner, I know we were doing a couple shoulder things. Maybe that's not working. Here's a different protocol. It's a great tool for connecting the two, but by all means, you can use it by yourself.
Yeah, that's interesting because it's all very well, isn't it, getting the data, getting the initial analysis, but it's how to interpret it and how to use it to your benefit that ultimately is going to be useful to you.
Exactly. I mean, and that's what I don't say it was a struggle early on, but this is a poor business mistake of mine is we concentrated so much on getting the information about how your mobility or symmetry or whatever it is, but we needed a partnership with those who really knew what to do with it. And we partner with TRX and we're fortunate to work with a PhD sports science guy named Chris Frankel, who was just fantastic. And he would always say, now what, so what type thing. I mean, it's great data. What am I
Exactly.
supposed to do with it? So we do have it as simple as possible. And, again, you do a screen at home. If you're not working with anyone, here's a protocol based on your most recent assessment. And that's fine. But if you're working with somebody else, they might say, okay, you can look at that, but I want to give you a specific 4 to 6 week program because you really need at least 4 weeks to groove any patterns and make the improvement.
And what feedback have you had? You say it's widely used now around the world. What are people saying to you in terms of results and benefits?
It's in really the personal training, boutique studio, even on chiropractic side. Go to a pop-up event like a running group doing their 5K for the day and do a screen. People tend to have no problem doing this, and some may, for instance, not want to do a body comp because that's somewhat invasive. But people tend to be, oh, fine, I don't care if I move badly. I don't have a problem doing a movement assessment. So that becomes more lead gen, and then it becomes a sales and then a retention tool. So on the other hand, if you're looking at companies or high performance level sports teams, they're not looking to sell anybody in the same way that personal trainers are. It becomes a preventative tool at that point. Now, prevention doesn't sell. If you go to a gym and say, hey, this is going to keep your members from getting hurt, and that's why you should purchase it, we would make zero sales. But now we can say this can drive personal training business. Great. Again, two really different ways to look at it. But the good thing is it's the same software.
Why is prevention looked upon in such a negative light? It seems to me to be the most important.
I'd agree with you. I think it comes down a lot. What we've seen is to this feeling of infallibility. Well, I'm 51. So I realize now, like I need to really pay attention and I need to do a better job on my corrective protocols. But before I turned 40, I didn't really care. It just, I was fine. I wasn't as susceptible to injury, so why should I worry about that? I think it takes someone, what we've seen in our experience, once they get hurt, okay, now this tool becomes more effective. I also think that kind of going back to a lot of the guests that you have and talking about people know that it's important to know, I think for the most part, your glucose levels, your blood pressure or cholesterol. That's kind of been ingrained. Let's find out where our levels are. If they're bad, do something about it. I certainly don't think it's ingrained that, hey, we really need to measure your hamstring flexibility and hip mobility because if those are bad, that could lead to a back injury. I think that's changing. And part of that is because we now have means to be able to test so we can do something about it. But I also don't know if people, for the most part, realize that if your hamstrings are really tight, that's what's going to cause your back injury. It's not because there's something necessarily fundamentally wrong with your back. Your back is just carrying too much load because the rest of your body's not doing what it needs to do. So I think now that the tools available to measure movement, there's the research and the discussions that you and others are having about how important this is for longevity, I think that's changing.
Yeah, and I'd agree with you. And I think that goes to the heart of the matter. It is access to data, whether it be the wearables that we're using or access to technology in the gym or whatever it is, that we're just beginning to understand. Like whoever understood HRV, heart rate variability, that we can get through the ring that we're wearing. But it's all very well getting that information, but understanding what it is and how it can help us to know the variability in our heart in terms of how our heart is operating and how to just to be alerted to the data when it isn't quite right. You know, what does it mean? Otherwise, there's no point in having this data, is it?
Exactly. And this is, our next iteration of our software really excites me because we're partnering with a company called Rook. They allow any other app to have the user pull in their wearable data. So when someone will onboard with us, if you mentioned the ring, if it's an Aura ring, you'll be able to pull in that data into our app. Now, where that gets exciting is we're going to be able to see a couple things. First of all, your true readiness. So I went on a nice long hike in the summer in Arizona. I slept great that night. I had a 97 on my Whoop, and it gives some template message. You're doing great. Go out, and it's a peak day for you. But that affected my movement because of my knee and doing all that hiking. So I was about 30% lower on my movement. So what was my true readiness that day? And that's what we're going to be looking at to getting really all the data you want. Because again, kind of going back to what I think I mentioned at the beginning, these are not mutually exclusive measurements in that one affects the other, and it's movement that it's affecting a lot of these other metrics. So again, not necessarily, it's more than correlation, it is causation. So if we can prove it's been shown, the guys at FMS did it, but we can do it more at scale now. Like, imagine if it got out there that's get outside quickly, don't have caffeine for 90 minutes, have your apigenin and magnesium and L-theanine at night. Well, imagine it could say, hey, do your hip mobility exercises and a couple other things, and that's going to help your sleep as much as taking magnesium. I'm kind of making a little bit up now as an example, but
Yeah.
yes, you want to improve your sleep, move better. You want to improve your mental health, yeah, do your meditation and other things that have found to be helpful, but do your stretching, mobility work too. That's where we're going, and that's again, we need to be measuring that, and we're real close to being able to do that.
And how much of a challenge is it to democratize access to this technology? Because it all comes at a price, doesn't it?
It's been impossible until recently because of the hardware limitations. But now that it's available on iOS and Android, people can download it. I think the challenge is people many times don't want to. Oh, I don't want to add the 47th app. I already have 46. And then again, as simple as maybe just the overhead squat assessment is, you're still trying to get people to do the screen that have not necessarily had any exposure to it. And yeah, we're giving good direction, we think, on the assessment, but just getting people to be able to understand how to do it is still a challenge, and we fortunately get enough data that we can keep improving. But it's having this, having this on a mobile device, and then uh, more importantly, or on top of that, I think being able to assess using that front camera is critical, and self-assessing. So I think in one podcast, someone the podcaster was asking for a potential title, and I said, well, how about democratizing movement? And they didn't like it, but you mentioned that, and that's kind of what where we are right now. Um, so it's apt that you mentioned that.
Yeah, no, I can't see why anyone wouldn't like that. It seems so basic and fundamental to me that we democratize the access to this wonderful, exciting new technology, but also an understanding of the basics, and you can't really get much more basic than healthy movement. It's what we're born with, and it's what really keeps us alive.
Exactly, and I think that as you and others disseminate the information of the importance to longevity and just your ability to do not only train but just do basic things in life, I think people will be more interested in getting the information because they know why it matters.
Yeah, I hope so. Just closing this, and in more general terms, Andrew, what are your own longevity aspirations? Is it something that you give much thought to?
I have a lot recently because some of my previous injuries have prevented me from doing the things that I really like. I've been doing all the other stuff, with nutrition and good sleep hygiene, and I will continue to. But the number two cause of injury is asymmetry, because which I'm experiencing based on everything being injured on my left side. But the number one cause of injury is previous injury. And so I'm very, very focused on that because I'm 51 years old and I can't do some of the things I love. I can do everything else right on the nutrition, sleep, mental health side. That won't matter. I want more than just to be around for a while. It's health span, not lifespan, I think is what
It is health span, absolutely. Yeah.
exactly. And again, the biomarkers and everything is a huge component, but does that matter if you can't get out of bed?
Exactly. And I think there are lots of reasons to be optimistic. I think, Andrew, your technology is fascinating. I wish you all the best with it in the future. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me and helping to disseminate the importance of movement as a vital sign.
Anytime. And I agree with you. I think movement as a vital sign, it's an expression that I hadn't really used before. And I think to get it out there as part of the bigger picture, I think it's hugely valuable.
I do too. Thank you, Peter.
The Live Long podcast is a HealthSpan Media production. I'm Peter Bowes. You can contact me through our website, livelongpodcast.com, where you'll also find show notes for this episode.
This podcast is for informational, educational and entertainment purposes only. We do not offer medical advice. If you have health concerns of any kind, or you are considering adopting a new diet or exercise regime, you should first consult your doctor.